What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I'm talking about the new Godsmack album, When Legends Rise. So, Godsmack are back. This is their seventh studio album. A band I've always been pretty fond of. I know a lot of people don't really care for them. I guess you could say, their albums have been a bit samey sounding over the years. But I've always kind of liked their brand of like hard rock, kind of metalish, kind of new metalish. I kind of just grew up on them, so it's a band that always stuck with me. And it's a band that's absolutely fantastic live. I saw them, I think two or three times, just in like different festivals and stuff like that. And they always just brought it, like so much energy, just so engaged, just full throttle, 100%. And just a great band to see live. And like I said, I always kind of like their brand of rock music. This new album, I was a little concerned at first, when Legends Rise came out recently. They released that first single, Bulletproof, which I was not too keen on, and it hasn't really grown on me since then. It definitely has more of a mainstream sound to it. Personally, I just don't like the very over-processed sounding vocals. I've always really liked Sully Erna as a vocalist, so, that wasn't really doing it for me. I thought the chorus was way too poppy and weird for Godsmack. I don't know, to me it just sounds like something like you would hear like Kelly Clarkson or someone doing. Where like in the right setting it might be a pretty good song, but in like a Godsmack setting it's not. Like I don't think it's a terrible song. It's just one that hasn't quite clicked for me. I don't really enjoy it. So I was a little cautious going into the album, but I gotta say that this has definitely exceeded my expectations because while they do change their sound a bit, and the band has stated that it was purposely trying to change things up on this album, they don't overdo it. And I feel like for the most part, they do a pretty good job of taking some newer elements, some more mainstream sounding choruses and poppy hooks, and mixing it with their signature sound, which I do enjoy quite a lot. So for me, really, Bulletproof is one of the kind of few low points on here. I feel like the experiment into a more mainstream sound works a lot better on some other tracks, which we'll get to, and there is your fair share of just, heavy, aggressive Godsmack music, which I do like, which is something else I was worried about after hearing Bulletproof. I was afraid if the band was going to go too mainstream with these songs, you would lose like how good they are as musicians, but that's definitely not the case, and it's on full display here with When Legends Rise. Just a full throttle, energetic, fiery opener. What I did notice when I looked into the credits of the album, John Feldman is involved here. He rears his head on a couple songs as far as like a songwriting credit, and leading into the more mainstream sound on some of these tracks, I can almost guarantee the woes, all the woes are probably Feldman. If you've been following my channel for a bit, I've talked about him on here before because he keeps popping up, I talked about him during my Goldfinger review. I do like Goldfinger, and I like ska music in general, but I talked about Blink-182, and I talked about Beautiful Bodies, and then later on Black Veil Bride, stuff like that. And when Feldman gets involved, it's like these bands just do that whoa thing, and it's always the same kind of generic sound. So while he doesn't have credits in songs like Unforgettable, which definitely use that whoa, way more than I would like, I think he probably had a hand in that. For me, Unforgettable is the other low point. I'd say like Bulletproof and that one are the only two I don't really care for. I like the verses of it, has a nice groove to it. I like Sully's delivery. It's reminiscent of some of the earlier records. But then it gets into that chorus and it's just so like generic mainstream sounding. The children's choir does not help for me. I don't know, maybe I'm weird. I don't like the sound of children singing. So for a song that was already not really working for me, you throw that on top of it, I'm just like, yeah. But much like When Legends Rise, the next song, Every Part of Me, that mix sort of works for me. I think it has, again, like a very big hook to it. It has John Feldman involved in the writing, so I think that's probably where that sort of came from. But it works with the heavier guitar sounds, the nice riffage, the explosive moments, especially into that bridge section. I like that change. It like spices things up. I feel like when bands try to get too mainstream, actually, when rock bands try to get too mainstream, they fall into a trap of sort of just staying the course through the song, delivering like a verse, chorus, very straightforward. And I'm glad that Godsmack doesn't fall into that for the majority of this album, and Every Part of Me is a good example of that. I feel like the ballad Under Your Scars is probably the best payoff as far as the more experimental side of this album goes. It is a ballad, there's a lot of piano, a lot of strings, It's reminiscent of some of Sully Erna's solo material, which I do like. Check out a song like Broken Road from his first solo record, which is just a pretty much straight piano ballad. But that works for me here too. I do like it in the Godsmack form as well, and I just think that all that added instrumentation we haven't heard from them as a band before just works really well on here, and I do like that song quite a lot. All that being said, you get plenty of just, straightforward Godsmack on this record. Another thing I'm pretty pleased about, I know Sully Erna had been saying that, probably about half of this album is experimental for them. The other half is just what you would expect from Godsmack, which I think is a nice way to do it. A great example is Just One Time, which is one of my favorites on here, which I actually believe there's a writing credit from the guitarist of Seven Dust on this one. I love that explosive, heavy bridge going on. Definitely the heaviest moment on the album if you're looking for like a heavier track. And otherwise, the song throughout the verses and the chorus has a nice kind of swingy groove to it. Take It to the Edge, another explosive track, another favorite of mine. Again, does a good job of providing a pretty catchy chorus, but nonetheless, bringing up the energy, providing some very heavy riffage. The chorus on that one is probably the one that gets stuck in my head the most, actually, which is interesting. I feel like, possibly the catchiest song on the album is also one of the more heavy ones. I mean, Godsmack always had some pretty big hits, so I get, doing the Bulletproof thing, try to get some mainstream radio attention, but I find it's not really necessary. Because I think When Legends Arise and Take It to the Edge and some other songs on here have, just as much hit potential as Bulletproof. Without that over-processed sound and that very generic, typical sound that you hear a lot in mainstream rock nowadays. Eye of the Storm is a fantastic closer, and I think it's cool to see that it is showing up in the band set list already, very early on in the set. Just a nice explosive way to end it. I thought after hearing Under Your Scars, there was a possibility that this album would end on a softer note. They would do another ballad, but no, they just keep punching towards the end of the album. Another one with a nice heavy groove to it. There's a lot of grit in Sully Erna's voice once again. Probably the angriest he sounds on this album. And the bridge section with, the kind of heavy, straightforward riff, as well as the wah solo coming from Tony on here, has a new Metallica-esque sound to it, which, obviously the band is a big fan of Metallica, so it's not that surprising that that would come through. And throughout there are some decent moments as well. Let It Out is a good song. Say My Name is a good one. It has a bit of 1,000 horsepower, their last record, sound to it, where it's kind of just like a straightforward, driving rocker. The only thing it's a little nitpicky about Say My Name is that kind of high lead guitar line in the chorus gets a little bit irritating, but it doesn't detract from the song too much. So yeah, overall, I'm definitely enjoying this album. As I said, Bulletproof as a lead single had me very concerned, but When Legends Rise, when that came out, pretty much, evened me out. And, overall, I'm enjoying this thing. I probably wouldn't say it's one of their best albums, just because I really do enjoy, almost all of them. But it's a solid one, and it's one that I see going back to quite a bit. And there's some big standout moments on here. The title track, Take It to the Edge, Just One Time. The ballad Under Your Scars actually does a really effective job of changing the band's sound up, but still sounding like them. So, I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 5 for this one. Let me know what you think of the album in the comments, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.